and the topic is enhancing properties of biodiesel by heterogeneous catalysis. No, sorry, carry on. Right.
We didn't expect we'd have this distance.
It's fine. Right, so the question. So I'm going to start off with a question. Why is it that the likes of me and you today are unable to use biodiesels? Why is it that there's a lack of why is it that there's a lack of uptake of biofuel?
You get extra marks for interference, you know that,
Sure. So, do you all want to come up? But anyway, what was I? Alright, so biodiesel uptake. So there's not been widespread uptake, and it's not political politics is the only thing. Regardless of who you voted for yesterday, fundamentally it boils down to 4 factors. Firstly, availability. Can the oil supply meet the demand for fuel? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. Secondly, sustainability. All the feedstocks that we're using and all the materials that we're using to create biofuels, are they from bio-origins? That's another question we need to answer. Cost. And first one, availability, by the way, I can be in the second session, you'll be exploring that. Sustainability, that's an issue that I'm not sure who addresses that in this department. Cost, however, is also an issue that's been addressed in this department by the systemic acid that's called it, and you'll have Elena exploring that. My area is quality. The main issue with quality is cold flow properties and oxidation stability. So cold flow properties, how does the fuel behave under cold climates? And oxidative stability is how does it behave when it's stored for a long time? How does it degrade? And just moving on, so quality is my area. I'm just going to give you a bit of background theory on biodiesel so that you can understand my area better. So fundamentally what you have is some sort of oil which you can derive from edible crops, non-edible crops, animal fats, waste. Animals, fats and waste, and you react that with an alcohol, typically methanol, and some catalyst, sodium hydroxide, and that gives you biodiesel and gives you glycerine as a byproduct. Now, right. So oils are composed of triglycerides. Triglycerides are made up of fatty acids. Now, just to give you a bit of background chemistry, fatty acids, you have saturated fatty acids, i.e. notable one. The people from petroleum hydrocarbons, you'll refer to them as parabens. And you have unsaturated fatty acids, 1-double-1 mono, di, tri. And so these fatty acids, they can either vary in length. So this is an example I've given you of a carbon chain length of 18. They can vary in the number, odd and even numbers. They can vary in the unsaturation. And also, in unsaturation, you've got isomers such as cis and trans geometric. And you've also got branching isomers. Now, typically what happens is, when you produce biodiesel, the functional group changes. So, the carboxylic acid group that you have in stearic acid, as C18 example, that changes to a methyl group, and from fatty acids you become fatty acid methyl esters. And by transforming them into fatty acid methyl esters, what you're essentially doing is you're dropping the melting point. So you go from 70 to 39. But the key thing, and regardless of what Professor Google tells you, right? You shouldn't put your oil into your car engine straight away. The reason for that is basically the viscosity. The viscosity of your oils is way too high if you compare them. So you've got 27 there and you've got 4 to 5. If we compare this to crude oil diesel, what you essentially have is you've got the functional group knocked off, so you just have basically hydrocarbons. And the melting point of the hydrocarbons is much lower than both of them. And the viscosity is much lower than them as well. So what's the problem? Alright, I've given you a little chemistry lecture on what fatty acids are, fatty amino acids. So the problem essentially is that biodiesels are derived from various sources. And each source exhibits its own profile. So for example, if you've got biodiesel from coconut, that's predominantly saturated. If you have something from something like camelina, canola, camelina, it's predominantly unsaturated. So, let me explain this. Coconut oil will have a high melting point, but inversely, it's got a high oxidative stability as well. So the more you unsaturate your, or the more unsaturated the oil source is, the better coal-fuel properties it will have, but worse oxidative stability. So more than once you introduce, the oxidative stability drops, but the coal-fuel properties improve. So this is a paradox. This is a catch-22. Coconut biodiesel, great for storage, rubbish to use in your cars, they'll freeze, especially in Manchester. Canola, great for coal-fuel properties, you use in Manchester, but you can't store it for long, right? So the question is, I should go on to that. Just to give you an example of how complicated biodiesel and oil sources are, you've got tons of components inside. It's not like working in, or a lot of the catalysis research that is done, it will either be one molecule or two molecules. You have a host of molecules or a host of fatty acids. So palm, for example, it's half saturated, 40% less than half. And it's pretty much, 60% unsaturated, C18-1, C18-2. Now this is a problem because if you look at the fatty acid melting point, it's 30 degrees. So palm oil, at room temperature, is solid. You can't even think about using it in your car. Once you transform that into biodiesel, again, it still freezes at 70 degrees. So again, you still can't use it. So what are the solutions? What are the solutions? Currently, Stagecoach, they use biodiesel derived from used cooking oil and beef tallow. And that freezes at 14 degrees. Now, Stagecoach claim that they use 100% biodiesel. And how can it be that they use a biodiesel that freezes at 14 degrees when it's pure? The reason why they do it is they modify the engine. So they have two tanks. One injects crude oil diesel, which heats up the tank and it heats up the engine past 14 degrees to about 30 degrees, and then the biodiesel injects. So that's how they get away with it. Now the question is, if we're going to do that to every car in the UK and around the world, is that practical? No. You're not going to do it to every car, right? It's not practical. Secondly, what they do is they create blends. They blend the biodiesel with your crude oil drive diesel, and that improves the properties. But then the next question, is that sustainable? So the recommended blend ratios are B20, 20% blend, 20% biodiesel with 80% crude oil, and that's safe to use in your car. Thirdly, additives. So you can use things such as isopropylene to reduce coal-fuel properties and antioxidants to increase the oxidative stability, but again, they're expensive to synthesize. Last one's interesting. Some people do this, actually process it. So what they'll do is they'll get the biodiesel and then they'll cool it down gradually. And as they're cooling the biodiesel down, they'll remove fractions that freeze at a high temperature. Now, if I take the example of palm, that was 40% stearic acid, which was saturated, you've lost 40% yield. Right? Because you're removing the fraction that freezes at a high temperature. And so basically you experience low yields. Again, that's not practical. So what is the challenge? The challenge we had was find a way of enhancing the properties of biodiesel without blending, without additives, and keeping the same yield. And the solution that we've worked on is changing the chemistry by heterogeneous catalysis. So let me give you a bit more chemistry. Not had enough. So we've discussed basically unsaturated doesn't work. The process is called dehydrogenation, simply because you compromise one quality over the other. So what you're essentially left with is the traditional oil and gas process known as dewaxing. So dewaxing is a combination of hydrocracking and hydroisomerization. Hydrocracking, breaking the longer molecules into shorter molecules, and hydroisomerization branch. Let me give you a few examples. Hydrocracking. If you have this C18 molecule, and if you could crack that somewhere along the middle, you'd end up with a C8 fatty acid methyl ester. So the melting point will go from 39 to 16, and you end up with a decene molecule, which is minus 30. And not only that, your oxidative stability is also high, so you're not compromising on oxidative stability. Secondly, hydroisomerization. If you can create a methyl branch, just by creating one methyl branch, you can reduce the melting point by 12 degrees. The people that are more vigilant amongst you probably clicked on that. How about if you have an unsaturated? How do you deal with this? Now, this is a key question that I've tried to address in the last 2 years, and I've only realized it within the last month. write on my thesis now. And the key aspects of this is what you do is you hydrogenate the unsaturated first, so you get the oxidase stability, and then you go on to keep branching, create a mixture of branched molecules. And the mixture of branched molecules end up with a chemical which not only has a high oxidase stability, but because the molecules are unable to orientate themselves to freeze, crystallize, they have a low melting point and high oxidase stability. So that's the solution. That's the solution to that. Now we tried to do this, so this research has been going on for a good 10-15 years, but everyone was carrying this out in a batch process. So I thought I'd take up the challenge of doing something different, and we tried to do this in a trickle bed reactor. And we used the heterogeneous catalyst that we used was zeolite beta. I won't go into zeolites too much because it's at the hands of zeolite people. You've got some pieces pulled out, but you've got to say hi in your session too. So I won't take the shine of their presentations. So I'll just get this. Let me go into results. From results, you can see that basically this is C18-1, this is C18-2. Yeah, it's not that obvious. And what we found is that 300 degrees, 0.2 mils per minute, you can hydrogenate these. So you end up with C18-0, and then you can form hydroisomers, and you can crack the molecule. And by doing that, so what you actually see here is that initially you have an increase in melting point. And if you go back to the theory, what happened is faster flow rates, you had hydrogenation of unsaturates, which contributed to the increase in melting point. But then as isomers began to form and as you got cracking, you saw a significant drop in melting point. So this is, and we managed to drop this by 3.5 degrees, and you probably think this isn't great. But the best result was at a slower flow rate. At a slower flow rate, what we found was that you had in situ, you had hydrogenation, hydrocracking, and hydroisomerization, and that dropped it straight away. That dropped the melting point by 5 degrees within 5 minutes. And again, you probably think that isn't great. But let me put things in context. In 2013, Ferguson working on our area in Canada, he used palm biodiesel. He worked in an autoclave system, he liked basic 4.5, temperature condition 300 degrees, 40 bars, 16 hours, used 3 process steps, he dropped at 4 degrees. Myself and Arthur in the group, very high. Palm biodiesel, continuous trickle bed reactor, zeolite base will provide 250 degrees, we dropped at atmospheric pressure 5 minutes, 1 process step, and we've dropped it at 5 degrees rather than 4. So is it a breakthrough? It's the beginnings, right? So what's next? So we managed to reduce the focal property, we managed to improve the focal property, reduce the melting point. What we need to now do is actually identify what is it. You see here that the power point is going back up. The reason it's going back up is because the catalyst deactivates. So something is stopping the catalyst from doing what it was doing in 5 minutes, but then it's stopping. So one thing we need to do is identify what component is responsible for the deactivation. If there's some way we can identify the component, isolate the component, then we might be able to get better conversions. Better conversion will lead to further drops in melting point. Another thing is we need to optimize the trickle bed reactor. Like I just showed you, if we reduce the flow rate from 0.2 to 0.1, we experience much more of what we wanted in situ, hydrogenation, hydroisome, and hydrocracking. Last but not least, find a new catalyst. So this is a new area. This is a new area in the oil and gas which I would like to be implemented on biodiesel components. So what you have, and it's good job Lisa's not here because this is his research, so it's his research. So what you can do to improve the reactivity is create mesostructured zeolites. So mesostructured zeolites allow entry into the molecule, easy way in, easy way out, and it prevents it from deactivating. And that will increase the yields and therefore reduce the melting point even further. And that's some area that the MSCs will look into and future PhD students. So I'd just like to end that. Cool. Any questions?
Regarding the list of possibilities that you show us on how to improve the property of the started because it was not sustainable. It was not clear to me why that option was not sustainable. Can you elaborate that?
Oh, simply, if your benchmark is that you want to switch from a petrol company to a bio company, then you don't want to keep using petrol. So you don't want to keep using petrol, and it's not sustainable. In that context.
What if you just, if that blending is made in a way that the proportion of that oil is enough that the properties of your final diesel, but still reasonably sustainable?
Yeah, that's a great point, but I just want to take you back actually. If you look at hydrocracking, would you not agree that this is in situ blending? If you could crack the molecule into hydrocarbons, which is actually what you've got, and you've got that catalysis, that's in situ blending. So why take oil from the ground and then blend it? When you have oil, break the molecule down, in situ blending.
Okay, we have time for one.
So the first one, you were working with palm oil, right? So where did you get the palm oil from? Supply or the region?
Yeah, I think because you're going to have a worldwide, right? So worldwide KTC palm oil. But, yeah, the thing was that we started off with that, but we then changed. So we changed from KTC worldwide palm oil to something from Biofuel Group. The reason was because what you get from worldwide is not refined. What we were noticing is that because it's unrefined, some of the molecules that give the oils their colour, such as lutein, beta-carotene, they're actually being absorbed onto the catalyst, which are deactivating it. So then we went to unrefined, which is from Postgraduate Group, and that was a treat. So yeah, and the second question.
Can you talk with Adeel later? Sorry to
I don't know for me. Alright.
But we are a little bit late and they need to pick up. So our second presenter is